Got the light, camera, microphone. Is it working? Yeah. I think we're good to go. What is going on? Welcome back to Shed Built. In this episode, we're working on the coils. It's been a while since I said that. All right, before we get into this episode, I know what a lot of you are thinking. Where have you been? Why has it been a year since you uploaded a video, and what is going on with the Troopy? And I will explain. I feel like I owe it to you guys. So around November, December 2021, I was working away FIFO, had been for the past 6 years, and then I lost my job. So the pandemic took over, sort of the whole world turned upside down, and I had to leave. Around that time, my brother had a baby as well, so he had new financial responsibilities, which is understandable, of course. So that meant he had to leave the shed. So I was left here. I had my, daily life responsibilities, financial responsibilities of rent, bills, blah, blah, blah. But then also an expensive workshop, which also comes with bills. No income, no one to sort of help out with the cost. So I was left here on my own wondering, how do I make this work? But I knew at the end of the day, there was no way I was getting rid of the shed because I love it here. I've got too much stuff here, there's no way. So I made the decision to work in here full time. I sort of started out just on Facebook Marketplace, advertising, just general fabrication, repairs, blah, blah, blah. A lot of you guys actually reached out, you viewers, you saw the ad, knew what I sort of done, and I had a lot of business through you. So thank you for that. I also did heaps of steel frames for builders. I made heaps of steel trays for four-wheel drives. I actually had a Unimog in here that I built like a tire carrier. That was my last job. I built a motorbike carrier for it. Heaps of other general bits and pieces. And honestly, it was super stressful. Like, accounting sucks, taking care of your money, not knowing what's my money, where this money belongs to, if it's mine, if it belongs to a job. It was just super stressful. But honestly, I wouldn't have changed a thing for the world, you know what I mean? I learned so much. The knowledge that I took away from that period was just insane. Sort of had to figure it out. I was here on my own, I had to make it work. And I picked up a lot of new equipment to make jobs easier. So I sort of upgraded the shed in the meantime as well while I was going through. And just, yeah, I wouldn't have changed anything. It was, I took a lot away from that experience. So with that being said, now you know where I've been. You know what's been going on. A lot has changed in the shed here, so I'll just quickly turn you around and we'll take a look around. All right, we'll start off with one of the newest additions to the never-ending list of side projects. This here is a 1986 Viscount Ambassador. Now, I've always wanted a caravan. I sold all of my camper trailers. I was just so sick of setting them up all the time. I don't take the caravan or camper trailers every trip I go on, only sort of the big ones. It's good to have a little base camp set up so you can just sort of jump in the car and head out for the day. So this is an Ambassador. It is completely aluminium framed. I've stripped everything out. I've replaced the drawbar. I've stripped out all of the original plywood and I've just insulated the entire inside, and I've run all new wiring all the way around. You've got 12 volt and 240. I've also installed a air conditioning. You can see up there, it's pretty dark in there, but I've installed a 240 volt air conditioning, some side lights, and I've also stripped out the frame completely and replaced all the floors. I've waterproofed all under there too and sealed it up. So this is probably one of the main things you'll be seeing in the background, wondering what's going on with that. So that's the caravan. Down the side there's not a lot. We still got the mural. Down this side, I've just added some pallet racking, some steel storage, and just tidied everything up with my panel stands, high lift and my rollers and stuff. More storage at the back, got my trestle, and then the biggest upgrade is these roller racks feeding into the bandsaw. You might remember the bandsaw that comes with like a tiny little stand that sort of hangs down at your knees. So I've fabricated a new frame for that, and then these roller feeder racks. These are extremely expensive. They shouldn't be, but they are super expensive, but also super worth it. I also replaced the that epoxy little clamp as well up on the hoist. I won't show you that yet because we're getting stuck into it. We got the Troopy body, which is just sitting there still. Got the table. Here is my air conditioning. So in summer here, it gets just insanely hot. We got the big LED high bay lights, which cast a lot of heat, and then also just the heat radiating through the tin shed is just insane. It gets up to sort of 40, 45 degrees with insane humidity in here. So I built this aircon. It's just a housing aircon unit, which is like an evap system that I built up on this little stand, and then made some ductwork, and then you can just plug your hose in here. Cool water goes to the top and then runs through the cooling pads, and then the fan just blows it out on this massive outlet through here. It's super big, but man, it gets the job done. Now this is the 75 series, the single cab cruiser you guys might have seen on Instagram, and it has blown out. So this, I don't know if I'm gonna be filming this, but I'm gonna put it on a 80 series chassis. I've bought all the mounts and stuff. So yeah, just cab mounts, tray mounts, and then get some custom shafts, and then sort out an engine for it. Over here, it's just all of our pallet racking storage, another workbench through here. And then the new Unimig. If you guys didn't know, you don't follow me on Instagram, we've partnered with Unimig. They've supplied the whole shed with most of their 10 amp systems. So we're running all Unimig stuff now. And then of course we got the new stand here. So I fabricated this welding dolly, and it just tidies everything up completely. I got the big bench here, which gets a lot of use. This is where Jake's workbench used to be. It was pretty much the exact same as that one, you might remember. But I've just replaced it with this massive toolbox, which helps heat with just keeping everything all organized. I've put foam liners in everything. Yeah, if I do a full shed tour one day, then we'll go through and sort of have a look at everything I'm running in there. Got cabinets, another workbench. Also run a new air hose reel, and it's using the hybrid line. If you guys are using air hoses or air tools, I'd highly recommend getting a hybrid line. It's just heaps easy to work with. And then I've also ran hard lines all the way along down to our new air compressor, which I'll show you here. So it's a 15 amp 4 piston oilless compressor, and it is a beast. It's pretty much silent. It's called the Hush 150, and it runs like you wouldn't even know. It just sort of ticks away in the background. And yeah, that's about it. Give you a little pan here. All right, you beauty. Let's get into it. All right, so you're gonna have to bear with me while I try to stumble through an explanation as to what is going on with the rear chassis. But as you know, we're trying to make a Nissan Patrol axle underneath our 75 chassis. Looking sideways, we've got our Patrol axle here, and the factory arms come up and over. On the Nissan Patrol, the chassis comes through like this and then comes up and over on a really large arc like that. If we'll try to mimic that setup on a 75, we've got our axle here, lower arm. The 75 sort of comes through and then starts a much shallower arc a lot sooner. So we can't mimic this same setup. So basically we're forced to go custom lower and upper arms. Now, if we're gonna make just custom and lower upper arms, while we're down there, we might as well just go a full custom 4-link rear setup. I don't know anything about 4-link setups, how to set them up. I know you can use calculators and you can sort of work out your anti-squat, your percentages from lower to upper arms, but I don't wanna have to deal with any of that. But luckily, I think I know a mob who will. Bud's Customs, exactly, woo! So what we have here is a complete 4-link rear suspension kit sent over to us by our good friends at Bud's Customs, and it is the key to make this patrol axle to our 75 chassis. They've completely designed, manufactured and tested this for us, and it comes with everything we need to get the job done. We have our upper and lower control arms here, our upper and lower control arm brackets, which will weld onto the chassis. We have some diff brackets and some hardware, and it is going to make our life so much easier, because basically all we have to do now is just center the diff within the chassis and weld the mounts to wherever they land. So if you guys are in a similar situation, you want to do a rear leaf to coil conversion like I am, and you just want to simplify the whole thing, get the pros to do it, send it through, or even just want to upgrade your factory stuff to something more capable like a 4-link, I'll leave all their details in the link below. So it's time to get to work. First thing I'm going to do is just build a little stand up here on the bench to hold the diff at a more comfortable height, so that I can then get the diff hat welded onto the axle.
I've finally got all the factory patrol mounts cut off, ground down, and everything's cleaned up. And as you can see here, I'm working on getting the top hat welded onto the housing. I've leveled out the housing just using a little level here on the flange. So I've leveled that out, and then I've welded in some stabilizing bars just to the bench, which I've also gone ahead and leveled out. As you can see here, I put 2 of these blue bars on either end of the axle mounts, so then I can pull a center line from either of these to make sure that the top hat's completely centered to the diff, and then I can also go ahead and level it out. To get the top hat leveled onto the actual housing, I've just set out a little laser level here, which I'll shoot a line across, make sure that it's leveled to the housing, and then we can go ahead and get it all tacked in.
All right, a fair bit has happened since we spoke last. A lot of staring, head scratching and wondering what is going on, but I finally figured it out. Basically, I cut off the lower control arm mount, so I had to go get those laser cut again, and then I just welded the brackets on. When I assumed that I welded those brackets there onto the diff housing, but instead it was that those brackets were just a brace for the factory mounts. So what I had to do was contact Bud's Customs. Luckily this has happened before in the past, so all he had to do was just flick through some new DXF files and I had to go get them laser cut. But that's all right, we got them welded back into place, and then we've set the diff center within the chassis, again using the laser level, lining up all the marks along here. I've also got one down on that front rail, if you can see that down there. And then that centers the diff. It also centers, because it's triangulated as well. Once you set your upper and lower mounts, they will sort of pin the diff into the center anyway. But just to be sure, I've clamped on again some RHS to the brake pad mounts, and then I can take measurements from the chassis to the RHS on both sides. The mounts are set in place, they're just clamped at the moment. You can see here, then I've also just double checked that these mounts are in the same place of different reference points along the chassis. So they're identical at the moment. You can see there, the mount sort of follows the contour of the chassis as well. So now I'm gonna go ahead, mark out around all the mounts, get it all ground down to fresh metal, put some weld through primer, and then we can burn them in. All right, so we've now got the mounts tacked onto the chassis. I'm not going to go ahead and fully weld these out until we've got all the components in place. That way we know that everything works, nothing's binding up. So to do that, I'm going to start working on these upper coil buckets. They pretty much already fit, but all I'm going to do is just remove this bottom plate here and remake it. So I'm going to cut these tacks off and then pretty much remake this bottom piece just to hug the bottom of the chassis a bit more. And you can see there, we're going to have to move the coil buckets on the lower inboard, and then we can get the coils in there and sit it under its own weight.
All right, the upper coil buckets are now finished. They hug the chassis nicely. I'm pretty happy with the way they turned out, and it's pretty much the exact same way that Nissan has done theirs. So now we need to start taking a look at the shocks. Now, if you can see up here, that is the factory Toyota shock pin, and the Nissan one is sort of rear facing like that, so they're not gonna work. And if you can take a look at the angle there, it's not gonna work anyway with our coil in place. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scalp these out with the plasma and then remove this factory pin. And if you take a look at this one here, this is the one that we cut off the GU Patrol chassis. So you can see here, it's a solid pin that runs through the mount and then just gets welded through a tube. So I've scalped out the other one for the other side, and it is a solid 30mm pin. The one that Toyota's running here is a 20mm pin. So what I wanna do is just cut this one out, flip it around, sort of like this, going through the tube, and then I'll weld that in place, and that will be our shock mounts sorted.
All right, and that is it for another episode. Now, I'm extremely happy with the way everything has turned out. As you can tell, there's nothing binding and we've got hardly any diff wind. You can see that diff flange pretty much stays parallel through the cycle, and that's mainly due to the Buds Customs 4-link. So again, a massive thank you to Buds Customs and also Superior Engineering for supplying all the suspension components. And again, I'll leave their links in the description below. And next episode, we've got heaps more shiny bits to do, and we also have to finish the final welds. So until then, like, subscribe if you haven't already, you know the deal, and I will see you next time. Cheers for watching. Rattle.